everyone. Artistry and Finesse with you on Wednesday, July 9th. I feel like I need to give a date, Finesse, to sort of ground us here. It's been a while since we did a podcast. I don't think we've spoken to the people since before free agency hit. So we've got a lot to catch up on.
Yeah, and I have no recollection of what we talked about last time.
I think
so. There's a really good chance we're just going to say the exact same things we said last time.
There's going to be some overlap. There's no question. We should probably be doing this more frequently, maybe on a weekly basis. I don't know, but
it's actually possible to say the exact opposite of what we said last time.
We could contradict ourselves entirely. Well, there is one thing that I know we didn't talk about last time because this news just broke today, and that's the Crosby wrist injury.
Yeah, it's not a surprise. I'll say that. He was not himself, and there are a lot of people thinking like that he just was like sort of collapsing under the pressure. But if you watched him play, he just wasn't strong with the puck, and like his puck dominance is his best feature. Like his ability to just have the puck and you can't get it off of him. And people were slapping it away from him. They were taking it away from him. He only scored one goal because his shot looked really weak. His pass, he's constantly getting passes intercepted. And if you have a bum wrist, it's hard to do that kind of, it's hard to make passes. It's hard to be strong with the puck. So it's not a surprise.
Now, we might have to go back and listen to the tape, but I'm pretty confident that I said he was physically injured, and you took the position that under no circumstances was he injured in any way.
No, I didn't take that position. You're getting me confused with somebody else. I definitely didn't say he wasn't injured. I said he looked. I think.
Are you sure? Because I'm going to go back and listen to the tape.
No, I think what I said was that the team was saying he wasn't injured. So I think my position was you have to assume he's healthy. Like whether he's injured or not, if he's not going to say he's injured, then we have no reason to think he's injured. Like we should evaluate him as if he's healthy.
I just want to lock you into your testimony right now. You're saying that you never said on a podcast Sidney Crosby is not injured.
No, I didn't say that.
Okay.
I'm confident I didn't say that.
Okay. Well,
you know what else I'm confident of? Nobody is going to go back and check whether I actually said that.
You know what the important lesson here is? You and I have talked about this before. It's pointless to jump on somebody in the moment in the way that everybody does now in this age of social media when somebody's having a bad series or a bad game or whatever. You need to let these things play out over time. Because number one, it's one postseason of hopefully many, many postseasons. And number two, things like this inevitably come out, particularly in hockey, months later.
Yeah, and it's not and I think that he waited an appropriate amount of time to make this into a situation where it's not the Ted Leonsis no excuses but type of thing. Like this, this does not have any inkling of like an orchestrated leak to deflect criticism because he's been getting criticized for 2 months. So
I still don't think he said anything. This was some source that told Dave Molinari about this, and then it was subsequently confirmed by the team. I don't think Sid's ever said anything at all.
Yeah, and I give him credit. He's not interested in getting sympathy for it. And you mentioned this to me online today, and it's just a great juxtaposition. I mean, imagine if this was Ben Roethlisberger with a wrist injury going into the playoffs.
I think Ben is going to be upset about this. He's going to want to have a little one-on-one sit-down with Sid and just explain to him how this is done. You don't wait until months after the fact to raise the fact of your injury.
No, I think what Ben would do if Ben had known that Sid was in duress is Ben would have come into the locker room and they would have done, like every morning, they would have done wincing drills. Like how do you properly wince? Where first they would have gone out to center ice and Ben would have sat there and said, I want you to look around. Find me every camera that's going to be on you. That's where you need to be looking when you're wincing. You need to make sure that and when you're, grasping the hand, shaking it off after every play. You need to make
Right.
sure that those cameras are watching. Hold the arm up, straight up in the air before you shake it.
Yeah, the wincing, the shaking, the gesticulation, and I think he also would have advised when you skate by Pierre, who's between the benches, you need to make some auditory. You need to give Pierre some auditory sign that you're injured. Say, it's so swollen. It's so painful. So Pierre will pick that up and relay that to the viewers.
Now,
I think Crosby's in a lot of pain out there, Doc.
What Ben would have done is Ben would have donned. He would have like let his own internal deliberation about whether or not to wear a special glove leak out. And then there would have been an entire day of talk radio in Pittsburgh about whether Sid should or should not wear the protective glove. And then he would have worn it for the first shift of the game. Then he would have took it off on the bench. He would have you would have seen him with the trainer just shaking his head.
Flex.
No, right. just like unstrapping the extra protective layer, throwing it down on the bench, and sitting down and being like, "Coach, put me in. I'm ready for the next shift."
Yeah, and do a couple of me interviews. Or you heard, me. I'm not going to complain, about any.
Well, that's the biggest difference between Crosby and Roethlisberger. We don't know Crosby. We don't ever get a me from Crosby. We know nothing about him. I know nothing about him.
That's for the best. The other big news today.
Wait, no. Before you move, though, it is for the best because this is what we didn't talk about in the last one. I remember specifically the awkwardness that is Crosby's personality.
Oh yeah, we do need to address that.
Because we saw there was a video where like Ovechkin was mic'd up at the Las Vegas award show, and there was an interaction between Ovechkin and Crosby that is like it's cringeworthy how uncomfortably awkward both of those guys are. But Crosby in particular just seems like, I mean, he seems like he's been cornered and like it just has no escape. He seems so uncomfortable and so awkward.
He's almost dysfunctional socially. It really brings into very sharp focus this idea that, people don't tackle this issue head on. They talk about Crosby as a captain. They say he leads by example. They try to put a positive spin on it. But really the most accurate characterization of Sid as a captain is probably he's incredibly deficient in the locker room. Can you imagine Crosby trying to give a pep talk? I mean, the guy it's like he can't connect emotionally.
Yeah, he seems so rigid and so uncomfortable that I can't imagine him saying anything to anybody without it coming off as sort of disingenuous. And I think part of that probably comes from just being under the microscope since he was 12 years old and being so careful to never say the wrong thing in public because, he'd get interviewed after Pee Wee games and stuff, which is crazy. So I sort of feel bad for him in that way, but the idea, I used to sort of poo-poo the idea the Pens need a Bill Guerin type or someone like that, but the more we see Sid as he grows not loosen up at all and not let his guard down at all, it just seems maybe the Pens do need a little bit more personality because he's just awkward. He's so awkward.
Oh, there's no question. I mean, he seems like a really nice kid, but could you imagine being one of these young players, 19, 20 years old, you're coming up and you're looking to Crosby to sort of show you the way. Imagine how awkward that would be.
Yeah. And you're right. He doesn't. It's not like he has an ego that's out of control or he's making demands. I mean, I think he's probably in a lot of ways a really ideal teammate. But whether he has the charisma, the personality charisma to be a captain is just sort of he's just not a traditional captain, I think is what you'd have to say. He sort of is the captain because he's the best player, and there's that's the most important thing, is be the best player and lead by example. But that other piece, sort of like either rallying the troops or loosening people up when they're tight, I don't know that he masters that. I mean, I'm not in the locker room, so I don't really know. But based on what I see from him in interviews and just the way he goes about his business, it's just a little uncomfortable.
It's not hard to discern. There's not a lot of complexity here. I mean, you can look at, just from that interaction, it tells you all you need to know about Ovechkin and Crosby. Ovechkin is sort of like the douchey captain. You know, the captain who's really good. He knows he's good, and he's sort of a jackass. He probably like shames the young players, and gives them the business when they're not doing what they should do. And he's probably just generally an ass. And Crosby is the awkward, socially dysfunctional guy.
Yeah, that's fair.
I saw everything I needed to see in that 90 seconds.
That's all you need to know. Everybody should watch that. Maybe we should post
it with the podcast.
Yeah, if it's not too much work, maybe I'll do that. But I think to get back to what you were about to transition to, the thing that we now know about Crosby is that his $8.7 million cap hit seems like somewhat of a bargain in light of the Tays and Kane contracts.
Wonderful segue. You sort of blew it there with the mispronunciation of the names, but otherwise spectacular.
I tried to fix it at the end, but it's too late.
Yeah, no, $10.5 million apiece for Tays and Kane, and I think you told me today Tays has never scored 70 points in a season. Is that right?
I didn't tell you that. You might have seen it on Twitter.
Can that possibly be right?
I'm going to look it up right now. I have a 36-inch screen right now in my new place.
I mean, whatever the number is, these guys are stars. There's no question about it. But it's remarkable how quickly, overnight in fact, that Sid Cat figure just became a total steal.
Yeah, so Tays had 76 points in 2010-11.
So he's never had 80?
He's never had 80 points.
That's amazing.
Was one Selke and one Conn Smythe. And let's see. His plus minus is incredible. He's a plus 141 in 484 games. That's really good. He scored 34 goals in his second year, 32 goals one other year, and then has never cracked 30. So he's cracked 30 in 2 of his 7 seasons. And I think like their $10.5 million cap hit, in my mind, is a little bit too high, because they are great players, and I don't mean to denigrate them at all or downplay like how good they are in the playoffs and all that type of stuff. But by going from their 6.7 hit or whatever, I think it's 6 point something right now, to 10.5, they're basically taking $8 million off the payroll from everybody else. And that's a lot of good players you can get for $8 million.
No question. Those
6.3 million they're going to make this year each.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot harder.
And
for
so,
the Blackhawks
to pay a guy who scores 40 points less than Crosby in the regular season, $2 million more than Crosby, that's a little bit questionable. And I know he's great in the playoffs, but I think I did a post on this about sort of like, or maybe, I don't know if I did a post or I was just like about to do one and sending you links and stuff, but like Kane and Tays have had their share of playoff droughts just like Crosby did this year. The difference was that they've had such a deep team that the team has kept them afloat long enough that they can score those big clutch goals. And if they're not able to spend an extra $8 million, I don't know that them and their point production itself is going to be enough to get them to those moments where they can be the clutch players that they are.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, this is another reason you've got to let this play out over time. But the other thing about Kane and Tays, they have performed spectacularly well in the really big games. They've had the droughts, but they've had a deep enough team, and there have been enough firepower on these Hawks teams to sort of get them through to the final round. How many times now?
They've been in the finals. They've won 2 cups.
And to the Final Four probably like 4 times.
Yeah, they lost to Detroit the year that the Pens beat Detroit. Yeah. And then they just lost to LA this year.
But their teams go far enough, consistently enough, and they've had enough success that you just get the sense when they get to these big games, these Game 7s in the conference finals or the Stanley Cup finals, they have a confidence that maybe Sid and Gino have lost to some degree. You know, the way that those guys can elevate in those moments in the last couple of years, it's on a different level than almost anybody else. You know, maybe Justin Williams is in that group, but, you know, Sid and Gino haven't achieved that in recent years. And I wonder how much of that is a confidence thing.
No, they're fantastic players, but I think a lot of that confidence comes from knowing that you got other guys that are going to help you along the way.
That's what I'm saying. Well,
I mean, they got Patrick Sharp, they got Marian Hossa. I mean, imagine, like, we saw a brief glimpse of Crosby with Marian Hossa, and it was glorious when they played together. Like, if Crosby had instead of Kunitz as his wing this last 6 years, had Hossa instead, I mean, that's confidence. Like, you know you got another guy who is as good as you. Like, you don't have to carry Kunitz. I mean, if Crosby struggles, Kunitz struggles. It's not like if Crosby struggles and he was playing with Hossa, Hossa could lift Crosby up out of his slump.
Yeah.
And, I think the Blackhawks did the right thing signing them, and I'm not saying that they shouldn't have given them the 10.5 because you have to look at, like, what else would you do? Like, could you really get 2 $5 million players that make up for Jonathan Toews or Patrick Kane? Probably not. I mean, those guys aren't out there. They're not available. But it's a lot. And I will not be surprised if the Blackhawks, as Sharp gets older and Hossa gets older, and Kane and Toews take up $4 million more cap space, plus they're playing a goalie $6 million, then watch what happens when they can't sign Brandon Saad. You know, and then and Andrew Shaw leaves, and Brian Bickle, is counted on to score 35 goals instead of just be like a third or fourth line workhorse.
Right. Well, the Hawks to this point have been the beneficiaries of having a lot of young guys on entry-level deals, and they've had some other really good contracts. You pointed out today, Duncan Keith. What is his cap at $5.5 million?
Yeah,
which
it's
is phenomenal.
5.5, which is incredible. Given what other defensemen are made. And it's the same as Brooks Orpik.
Yeah. So, and the Penguins have sort of been on the other side of that in terms of having really big, top-heavy contracts for the superstars, and they haven't been able to fill out their lineup in that way because they haven't had the cap room and they haven't had the young guys on the good contracts that they can plug into the lineup. But look at how the Pens are situated now. It looks like everything might be about to flip. That, at least, if not this year, next year, the Penguins are going to have a lot of room under the cap. I just wonder, for this season, what does Jim Rutherford have up his sleeve to sort of fill out the forward core? Because it's just not good enough right now to compete, is it?
No, but I think he's done a good job so far in free agency. I don't have any complaints. I mean, I think that Marcel Gottsch makes sense. It's cheap. I love the Steve Downey signing. Blake Como is a decent player. And I love the Christian Ehrhoff 1-year contract.
Everybody does. You can't complain about the approach to free agency because when everybody overpays, we didn't, and we got really quality signings. So there's nothing to complain about there. And we don't have to be a finished product right now. We all know that. The question is, what's the next step to compete this year? Next year being a different story. Do we have a big move in store, or is this going to be a trade deadline situation? What do you see happening
I
next?
hope it doesn't become a trade deadline situation. I think that we became a little too accustomed to Ray Shero relying on the trade deadline too much, perhaps. And I know that 2013 was a little bit of a unique scenario because when he got Iginla, there were only it was a shortened season, and then Crosby gets hurt in the first game. But, there's a risk that, the player might fit, but 10 to 15 games is not necessarily enough to make that player fit. So I would rather, if you want to make a move, I would rather just make it now. Because I just think there's more time to sort of evaluate it, and then if it's not working out, you can make another move later.
So let me ask you this question. I have a couple questions for you. First of all, there's a lot of talk about Evander Kane being moved from Winnipeg, and I think today, as a matter of fact, there was an interview with him where he did nothing to undermine all this talk about him being on the block.
Right.
So is that somebody that you think we should target, and do you think we can put a package together that would work for both teams?
Well, of course I'd love to target that part. I mean, who wouldn't want a 22-year-old guy who could score 30 goals, maybe more, playing with good players?
And who's tough.
I think that's maybe Neil would have been the right guy to move to get that package. How would you get him now? What? Well, you'd have to give Sutter, which I would fly him to Winnipeg to get rid of him. You'd have to give Sutter, Pouliot, and 2 first-round picks or something.
Do you have to give all that? Well, here's the thing. Adam Gretz did I don't know if it was a post or just a tweet today. It's interesting. He put together a list of guys who are similar to Kane in terms of production, that averaged around 0.3 goals per game through their age 22 season, and who were subsequently traded. And he gives a list of who they were traded for. So here are some of the guys on that list: Phil Kessel, Tyler Seguin, Nathan Horton, Martin Havlat.
I'm pulling it up. I'm looking now, yeah.
You see it: Ilya Kovalchuk, Rick Nash, Marian Gaborik. And you look at some of these returns for these guys, and they were not all traded at age 22. Some were traded much later, but Kessel and Seguin were traded when they were 21. And Kessel went for 2 first-round picks and a second-round pick.
Yeah, well, the first-round pick of Kessel, that was for the Seguin pick, and everyone knew Seguin.
Those are the Maple Leafs, so those are very high draft.
Yeah, Seguin was a can't-miss guy. That wasn't just a regular first-round pick in the 20s, like the Penguins.
Yeah. No, I understand. But the other thing you have to keep in mind is what Winnipeg is saying now. Is that they want to make the playoffs this year. Sounds like they want to make a hockey trade with assets coming back that are going to help them this year. Now, I don't know if that's true, but that seems to be the sentiment. Seguin, Dallas gave up Louis Eriksson, really good player. Riley Smith turned into a really good player. Joe Morrow and Matt Frazier.
We don't have that package.
Well, Seguin also, I think, is more valuable as the number 1 center.
But, we don't have – who was our Riley Smith?
No, we don't have that. But Tyler Seguin is a legitimate number 1 center in the league. So I don't think that Kane is going to warrant that much of a return, although he's going to demand a lot. And then, you look at someone like Kovalchuk, who was traded when he was 26, with much more of a track record than Evander Kane as a goal scorer. He got a return of Johnny Oduya, Patrice Cormier, who I don't know what the hell happened to that guy, Nicholas Bergfors, who I guess was a decent player, and a first-round pick. Yeah, that's not that great of a return for Ilya Kovalchuk.
So here's a package for you. That if the Jets want to make the playoffs this year, what would you think about this deal? Sutter and Paul Martin and a first-round pick.
I thought about that. I don't think it's close to enough because Paul Martin is going to be a free agent, and there's no way he's signing with Winnipeg. Right. So basically, you're trading for a guy that's obviously going to help you a lot. He's a top pairing defenseman. But, they have a lot of high-end defensemen.
So we're not getting. We're not getting him.
We're not what?
We're not going to. That's not a guy we're going to get. Kane.
It doesn't seem like it. Now, if you make it a package of Bo Bennett, Paul Martin, a prospect and a pick, then I think you're talking. I just can't see them accepting a package that includes a guy, no matter how good he is, that's going to walk after 1 year, and you're left with Brandon Sutter in a first-round draft pick. I just don't see that.
No. Well, look, maybe you send him a Chris Kunitz. Put him in the package. He doesn't have a no-trade clause.
I like it.
Wouldn't you throw him in that deal in a heartbeat? Just like you replace Chris Kunitz with a 22-year-old version of Chris Kunitz?
So what would the package be? Kunitz, Martin, and a pick? That's a hell of a return for Winnipeg.
Well, I don't know. I still think Kane is more valuable than that, but...
but that's two really good players.
You'd have to you'd have to go like Kunitz and Pouliot or something like that.
You got to give them some.
Because that's 3 years. Both of them are locked up for 3 years.
That's an awfully big return.
Minimum.
That's creating holes in our lineup.
Really? I don't think so.
Well,
I would package Kunitz and Pouliot for anybody.
Think about this year, though. For this year, the Kunitz for Kane trade, you're going to get more production, I'm sure, out of Kane, but not that much. Were you going to get 5% more goal scoring out of Kane than you would Kunitz this year?
It's worth it. You got the long term. He's 22.
Yeah, but I'm talking about competing this year. You're giving up Kunitz and Paul Martin.
No, but no, not Paul Martin. I'm talking about like Pouliot. I'm not saying Kunitz, Martin, and Pouliot. I think that's too much.
Yeah. So
why are we talking about this? Why did you bring this up?
I don't know. It's fun.
No, but so I think Kane is sort of a pipe dream. But I think the big thing on the Pens' plate right now is what to do with Brandon Sutter, because he didn't file for arbitration, but he rejected the qualifying offer. So they got to figure some deal out with him. What are your thoughts? My thoughts are well known. I don't want to beat a dead horse, but what are your thoughts on the Sutter thing?
Well, I think you need to be prepared to be disappointed, because Brandon Sutter is going to sign a 4-year deal for $3.6 million a year.
It's ridiculous. I've never heard something more ridiculous in my life.
Just prepare for it. It's going to happen. And as I said to you today, and I believe this, I do not think that kind of deal is warranted. However, we've seen that centers are very overvalued in this league. And if we sign him to that kind of a deal, he's going to be very tradable. So, all is not lost. It doesn't matter if he just stays the same player. If he doesn't improve at all, we'll still be able to move him with a deal like that, given what guys are getting right now.
I think he'll be tradable, but I think he's tradable right now. My problem with locking him up long term is I don't see any value in doing it. The reason you lock somebody up for a lot of years is because you think that like you're sort of gambling, right? You're like, I'm going to guarantee this guy $6 million because I think he's going to be worth $7 or $8 million when he actually performs next few years. Or you're just worried he's going to, you don't want to do a 1-year contract where he's going to leave. I don't know, like, what is Sutter's ceiling that he would ever outperform a 1-year deal such that, like, in a year from now, you'd be so screwed having to try to re-sign Brandon Sutter that he would ruin your cap?
Yeah, I'm with you. Here's the problem. I think it's not out of the realm of possibility that Brandon Sutter will be a 20-goal scorer. And 20 goal-scoring centers are worth about what we're going to pay him. They're worth $3.6 million a year in this market. Probably no question about that. The issue is he the right fit for the Penguins? And I think the answer is a resounding no. We need a third-line center not necessarily one who's going to score 20 goals, but one who's going to be really tough to play against. And that's not Brandon Sutter.
Yeah, it has to be like a change of pace from Crosby and Malkin. I mean, Stahl was not nasty, but he was a total curveball from what they were getting from Crosby and Malkin. Like, the other team would be tired. They wouldn't want to have a shift against Crosby and Malkin. Now I feel like the other teams, even if Sutter is like technically in the right position and he's doing Dan Biles and a stick on puck thing and all that stuff, the other team is never like, oh no, I have to go out on a shift against Sutter. He's so annoying to play against. And I think that's kind of what you need from your third line. You need a little bit of frustration, especially come playoff time. Like, we've seen it time and time again, Crosby and Malkin getting frustrated by lesser players, and Sutter just doesn't bring that element to the table at all for the Penguins. You want to say he's like a solid positional guy, he does his job, that's fine. But if you have like an asshole first and second line center, then maybe that's what you want in your third line center. When you have like two super highly skilled first and second line centers, like two of the best players in the league, you got to have someone come off the bench that's like a real pain in the ass to play against after them. Just a real asshole.
Right, and he's not that. You want to hear something amazing? In Mario Lemieux's 92-93 season, for my money, he was at the peak of his powers, which is unfortunate because that's the same season he got Hodgkin's disease.
Right.
He had 160 points in 60 games. Guess how much money he made that season?
$2.1 million.
3.6, or what's about to become referred to as Brandon Sutter money.
Yeah, it's criminal. It's
It's
criminal.
a different era, but still, that's just amazing to think about. It's like not much more than Derek England.
Sutter had 13 goals and 13 assists last year.
Yeah. So, look, he could score 18 to 20 goals easily this year with, his new line mates. But, again, it's just not necessary for us. It's just not.
Speaking of 13 goals and 13 assists, Danny Heatley had 12 goals and 16 assists last year for Minnesota, and he just signed a one-year, $1 million deal with Anaheim. You and I had talked about this offline. I think that's the type of veteran that would have been worth the Pens getting involved in and maybe gambling on.
Potentially. We talked a lot about looking into Danny Heatley signing, and he went for about what we thought he would go for. I can't really speak to this with any authority. I haven't seen him play since he was in Ottawa. I never saw him play one game for the Minnesota Wild. He could be just a total slug out there and not able to skate anymore. I don't know. I know that he's got an incredible shot and he's got a big body. I just don't know if he can skate anymore. So, I don't know if he would make sense on the third or fourth line, because I think that's where he'd be.
But on a team that has literally no forward prospects that are going to produce this year.
Yeah, I'm not saying
that $1 million is. I mean, could you get more out of like Jason Megna than you're going to get out of Danny Heatley? I don't know. I mean, I haven't watched him play at all, but that's like the type of guy who, he may have lost a step, but he didn't forget how to play and where to go and like how to get open for good centerman. So,
right.
Maybe if he gets a few shifts with Crosby Malkin, he can, instead of putting up 12 goals with whoever Minnesota's third line center was, he gets some shifts with on Malkin's line, like Peter Sikora did, or, and puts up 23 goals.
Yeah. Do I think we should have been in that conversation with Danny Heatley? Absolutely. I can't say for sure whether he'd be a fit for us or not. But would the 2011 version of Danny Heatley have been a great addition to the team? Of course.
Yeah, he dropped off. Only 28 points last year.
I think he was a healthy scratch the last bit of the season.
But look, it's all about sort of the role. I mean, there's some guys who aren't meant. If if they're crowded out of the top two lines, then they're not going to fit. But then maybe they do. Like, remember Miro Shatan in 2009? He was crowded out of the top lines, but he swallowed his pride and played a pretty decent role on the fourth line in the playoffs.
What a fourth line player. Oh, great hands.
Yeah, there's a value to having guys who know what they're doing. And everyone says that Heatley's like a really great person, despite his history. I don't know. I would like to be on that. What did you think of the James Neal trade, by the way? We didn't talk about that.
Well, I think that Patrick Hornquist is a good player. I think that, he's going to be somebody that we appreciate because he'll go to the net. He'll make himself available for Crosby and Malkin. He'll do all the things that he's expected to do, and he'll probably score 25 to 30 goals. The issue is, if you're going to trade James Neal, you've got to do one or both of the following things. You've got to address weaknesses in your lineup, and/or you've got to give yourself some salary flexibility. And
then use the salary flexibility.
I'm not sure the Penguins did either of those things. My understanding from everything I've heard and read about that trade is the Penguins really like Patrick Hornquist. They didn't necessarily, put James Neal out there for the highest bidder. They zeroed in on Patrick Hornquist and said, this is the guy that we want. And we're going to trade James Neal for him. Which
that makes no sense.
It sort of goes against everything that I would do if I were a general manager. I mean, I kind of feel like your only job is to maximize your assets.
It's like, we really like Patrick Hornquist. This other team's offering us a better player, but no, we really like Patrick Hornquist.
Yeah, like if you're a general manager, that to me would be rule number one. Like, what's the best possible deal you can make? How can you most optimize your assets in every situation? Doesn't sound like the Penguins did that at all, which is bizarre to me. And I think Mike Colligan had a post where he talked about how Rutherford was quoted in some book about being a general manager, and he admitted that his philosophy is not necessarily to get the best player out of a deal. He just sort of like finds players that he thinks will be a fit for his team, and he goes after them. He's not really concerned that he's giving up too much, which is just like a bizarre approach to be.
Yeah, it's asinine. It's asinine is what it is. I don't know. Like, I think the whole trade depends on Nick Spaulding, who I will admit I never heard of before the trade.
Is it Spaling or Spaulding?
I don't know. I'm going to call him Spaulding. He's 25 years old. He had a $1.5 million cap hit last year, and he had 13 goals and 18 assists. He outperformed Sutter. I mean, he had in 9 fewer games, he had 5 more points. So you're basically looking at like another like sort of mediocre third line player at best, right?
And Nick Spaling, he of the $1.5 million salary last year, has now decided he's taking the Penguins to arbitration because he must figure, hey, they can't demean me too much in an arbitration hearing because they insisted that I be part of this trade for one of the top wingers in hockey.
Yeah, and if if all you do is look at comparable players, and suggestions are that Sutter in arbitration would get upwards of $3 million, like Spaulding or Spaling or whatever would get close to $3 million, right? I mean, he had the same amount of goals as Sutter last year. He's roughly the same age. He's maybe a year older. What's the difference?
I have no idea what he's going to get.
And it'd be really like if we end up going through this restricted free agency period and spending $6 million on Sutter and Spaulding, that's an issue because we only have $7 million cap space.
Yeah,
that's too much money.
So to answer your original question about what I thought about the deal, I like the deal a lot better if we got Patrick Hornquist and a number 1 draft choice.
Or how about this? Patrick Hornquist, Nick Spaulding, and a number 1 draft choice. It's not even Nick Spaulding. I think we need body. So like, I'm fine with getting a body, even if he's just sort of mediocre. But it all kind of depends on what you sign him for and whether he's actually good. Because even if Patrick Hornquist comes in here and scores 30 goals, like Neil would have scored 35 or 40 goals. So it's all going to depend on whether Nick Spaulding is like actually a relevant player for the Penguins. And I have no idea whether he is.
I don't know about Nick Spaulding, but sight unseen, I can tell you I would have preferred Patrick Hornquist, a number 1 draft choice, and the salary space vacated by Nick Spaulding.
I'd have to know how we were going to use that salary space.
Sign another 1-year deal for $1 million with some, bottom 6 guy. That's what I would prefer.
Well, let's talk real fast, though, about, we only have a few minutes left, about the Ehrhoff signing. I'm a huge fan, and I don't think the Penguins should trade Paul Martin, despite our sort of needlessly hypothetical conversation about Evander Kane before. I love that the Pens have 3 really good defensemen, Letang, Martin, and Ehrhoff. I don't think that the Pens can count on the next 3 defensemen so much that all of a sudden they're in such a luxury position where they can trade Paul Martin.
First of all, let me answer that by saying I disagree that was a pointless conversation. I think it was one of the more important discussions of our time.
Well, if the Pens get Evander Kane, we can come on here and you can just yell at me for 45 minutes. How about that?
That's exactly right. I agree that it's great to have 3 top-level defensemen, but I also think that we're going to have to give up some assets to get another top 6 winger, hopefully sooner rather than later. The question is, can we dupe the Islanders into giving us Michael Grabner for Rob Scuderi and, a prospect?
I'd love to do something like that. Can we? I don't think so.
I think that Christian Ehrhoff is going to be phenomenal for us. Playing for Buffalo last season. Remember how bad Buffalo was last season?
Yeah, they were horrible. They were really horrible.
They were really bad. I believe he had as many points in the regular season as Drew Doughty playing for Buffalo.
Yeah.
He's really good. Mrs. Arshu just shushed me. He's really good on the power play.
How dare she?
How dare she is right. I don't think I was being that loud.
The only downside as I look at the Pens defensemen is there's not a lot of physicality on the blue line. I don't know that that's a bad thing. I just it's not an intimidating group, so that's why I think the snarl from the forwards, that's why I really like Steve Downey signing. I think you need to get a little bit of that edge in the lineup.
Just keep Bob in there.
Yeah, Bortuzzo's going to have a big role to play. A lot of people are just assuming that Mata, Pouliot, Dumoulin, Harrington are NHL. Maybe they're NHL ready, but they're not necessarily NHL good. NHL, they're good enough to play the Bruins in a playoff series level. So there's a lot. The top 3 is strong, and then I think the next 3 is still is a question mark. They're all ready to play. They can wear a uniform, but I just don't know that they're going to be that great.
I don't think Mata's a question mark. I mean, I think he's going to be
as long as he's healthy. Hey, we have 30 seconds left before we're going to get kicked off.
All right, we'll do another one soon. Thanks for joining us, everybody. Until next time, GTOG.